our lesson in a second. What have we done? What have we completely built over the years? We started building and buying properties, much like David does in our inner city areas, particularly in our inner cities. Grew that. You remember, some of you old enough to remember when Sears and Roebuck used to be in the neighborhood that they started moving out? So we bought a Sears and Roebuck store. In fact, they called us, they did a feature. My brother was also elected to the Board of Aldermen at the time in his 20s, and they had a piece in Ebony. It was called The Dynamic Duo Brothers, wielding a 1-2 punch on city politics. And we sponsored a lot of the heavy legislation that changed the face of our city. And we organized some of the other black elected officials, and we began to create that black power strength by creating the concept of bringing that fist together by not having individual fingers. And we were very successful at it. And at the same time, I started understanding corporate America. Never had exposure to it, but because they needed help, I started serving in many capacities for some of the Fortune 500 companies. There you learn the corporate structure, the corporate culture, and when you learn that, you really get an angle. Because if you can roll with the corporate culture and understand street, you're a pretty bad combination. From that, Sears called and said, we're moving out of the community, we'd like to look for somebody to buy it. We didn't have a lot of resources, but we figured out how to creatively finance it, which meant we lied. And, so we ended up buying it, converting it into an enclosed mall. We have about 50 tenants. We built shopping centers called Shops at Roberts Village behind it. Continue to buy. This is an inner city, so we continue to buy and still own a variety of properties. We build shopping centers, strip shopping centers. And I want to stop at that moment and let you know, for those of you who aren't aware, there's something called the International Council of Shopping Centers. That's the second largest convention in Las Vegas. It's going on now. I was there Monday. I was the first African American in 50 years to be elected to the Board of Trustees, the International Board of Trustees. And we've traveled to Dubai, we've traveled to South Africa, we've looked at shopping centers all over the world, and it allows us to come back into my neighborhood, our neighborhood, and begin to identify the types of tenants that work. And interesting enough, when the bubble hit, 2008, et cetera, and all the big box guys stopped building, the one most successful group of companies were the Family Dollars, the Dollar Trees, Rainbow, Aldi's, that had all done so well because they stayed in our community. They did very well, and suddenly you started seeing them white people because they actually have good products, but it's a much more affordable pricing. So if you want to get into the shopping center business, I suggest you look up ICSE.com, International Council of Shopping Centers. They have regional meetings where they have, shopping center 101 type seminars, and you will find in our neighborhoods we have a lot of abandoned strips, and many of those strips are ready for these types of business I just described to come back in. Just did a deal recently with a company called Gen X. And Gen X is a huge store that sells like hip hop clothes and everything else, but they sell regular jeans and like for 19 bucks. You could buy even duffel bags, huge duffel bags for 19 bucks. Where anywhere else it would be $50, $60, $100. But they price it accordingly, and they know how to buy. Of course, they happen to be Korean. And so many of the tenants in my building, I mean, you walk through my old Sears building, which I call the Victor Roberts building, named after my daddy. And you feel like you're in an international environment because so many of my tenants are Chinese and Asians of different backgrounds, etc. But we keep pushing to bring our businesses in, and they try and they succeed. But for some reason, we still have a tendency not to understand the value of being in the village that allows other people to shop and exchange ideas. But that's just a cultural thing that we will continue to fight. But the only way we're going to make it happen is if we have a place for them to rent, right? So unless you have somewhere for them to come, then why talk about it? The other thing is hotels. National Association of Black Hotel Owners, NABHOOD, National Association of Black Hotel Owners, Operators, and Developers. I was chairman for 10 years. A lot of people never heard of that as well, although it's been written about. But too often we just don't read. and therefore we don't know. But now you do. And if you have an interest in the ABCs of hotel ownership, to meet the various brands, to meet hoteliers who are there, just like this conference, free to openly talk about whatever you want to discuss. And it's these types of experiences that make all the difference in the world. It will save you time and save you money. I built a wireless phone company, probably the only African Americans who ever built it. When the digital environment was taking place, we just finished owning 12 full power TV stations around the country. Full power TV stations, like your NBC, ABC type channels. Yeah, my brother and I were the largest owner of black TV stations. When we saw that it was moving from the analog type of TV to digital, remember when that took place? We also realized that the phone business was going to move, and there were going to be auctions at the FCC to buy spectrum in various communities. Now, at that time, at the beginning of that, you remember when the coolest person in the theater was somebody with a briefcase and a phone in it? Yeah, that was the analog environment. You remember the phones? It was a snap, crackle, drop. I can't hear you, where are you? Well, we knew that we were going to move to digital, and that's what we did. And so we moved into the auction space, won enough spectrum to build half of my state, Missouri. I realized at that time that I needed to have a brand, so I decided I would talk to Sprint, who was in Kansas City. We owned a Gulfstream G3 at the time, and a Hawk a couple of private jets. And we said, okay, let's take our group, about 12 of us, over to Sprint and convince them to let us franchise with them. So if we build it, we'd actually have a Sprint backbone. Well, when we got there, they said, well, we only have affiliates for landline rural phones. And you probably don't realize, but all through your states, there are various different phone companies, landline phone companies. And all they wanted to do was give them an overlay with digital through their land. I said, well, I told them, there's over 100 of those in Missouri. You go out and make a deal, or you make a deal with me. Now, here's my track record. I've built all these TV stations from the ground up. I know what a tower is, I know what an antenna is, I know what a base station is, which would be what you would use in building all of these tower sites. You know when you drive around, you see all these towers all over the place, and you see the little sticks on it? Okay, well, I owned about 200 of those. And what happened was we learned how to build the TV station, so we built the cellular locations, which are like a microcosm reflecting that bigger macrocosm. Am I making sense? All right, so by telling them that and convincing them I had a team, some of the brightest and best African Americans in this industry, which was still an emerging industry, all I could tell you was they said, well, our board is not, authorizing us to do business with entrepreneurs. We have to do it with these landline phone companies. We said, fine. But keep in mind one thing. One, I have money and I can do it. Two, it's called first to market. So if I'm up before they're up, I'm going to end up with the market. About 40 days later, they called and said, can we have dinner? And we'll fly. In a week, we made a deal with them, and we not only had to have a state, we took the entire state in Southern Illinois because they gave us a pin, and they said, what's your territory? Now, we want to keep the big city Sprint hit, Kansas City and St. Louis. I said, well, fine, we'll erase that. We'll take all of the state of Missouri, a little of Oklahoma, Southern Illinois. How's that? Okay, well, I'll have some Arkansas too. And literally we did that. Now, the next question was how we're going to raise $100 million to build it. There's an article in Forbes that was telling you about the caption of the article, which is a story about us building this wireless phone company, was fake it till you make it. And I'm trying to figure out, man, how did he get that language? Well, I was sitting around with the reporter, having some chicken wings and drinking margaritas, and I must have said it because that was the headline. Of course, all the guys, the white guys, said, what does fake it till you make it mean? Because by that time, I will fast forward, by that time we had actually determined that one of the ways to raise the $100 million that we needed